Welcome to Candid Conversations. No one ever starts their business for a boring reason. That is why we invite industry experts and entrepreneurs onto the show so they can share their story with us. Today, we have Rob and Kirstin Maud, and they are the co-founders of Motherland Coffee. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Charles.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Charles. Thanks for having us.
The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine. Look, I must say that I've been to Motherland Coffee and I'm a big fan. And I believe during this period, the company is providing some coffees to some of the hospitals, the government hospital for the healthcare workers. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, during the time we were shut down and during the lockdown period, we were looking for a way to give back to the community that love us and that we love so well. And that came through one of the doctors that's a regular customer. And so we were able to give to the government hospitals around us. And it's been really a beautiful, generous expression.
No, that is awesome. I'm pretty sure they appreciate it because, I mean, I've spoken to friends of mine when they tell me what they go through, especially in ER. It's not like it's on TV, and the fact that the Motherland Coffee is offering some kind of help, they will definitely appreciate that. So thank you guys for doing it.
No, pleasure. Yeah, you're right. I think I went and set up the first station. My partner Seb would have done it, but he had put his back out, and we went to Helen Joseph's and just saw the environment there, and yeah, people put themselves out there big time. So it was one of the highlights actually of lockdown over that early period. Just going and seeing doctors and their eyes sort of sparkling now that they're going to get good coffee, and setting up a coffee station for them. So it was good fun actually as well.
No, that's pretty cool. Now I want to just go back to the origins of the story. So I believe the three of you guys, being 2009, summer of 2009, got together and take us through how that came about, because coffee shops, there's a lot of coffee shops. So why another coffee shop? Tell us.
Well, there wasn't a lot of coffee shops back then, funny enough. I think not as big, but there was Seattle, Vida had made a bit of an entrance. But I mean, in the Rosebank area where we were, there were more restaurants selling foamy cappuccinos. There weren't a lot of the third space independent coffee houses that we see now, and that's grown into. So I think we were at the end of a season where I'd taken over my dad's business. He had passed away, and I'd run that for 3 years. Put in a manager and handed that on, and just we were looking for a new something, and so we went traveling for 3 months, Kirsty and myself, and our daughters at the time, they were 3 and 5 years old, so a big family trip. And on that trip around the world, we started in Australia, China, States, Europe. We just visited a whole bunch of coffee houses because we just loved coffee, and it was on that trip where we thought, okay, we want to get into coffee. And either we're going to bring back a brand or else we'll, it dawned on us during the trip, we're actually on a train in Munich, and we said, like, why don't we start our own brand? I think it was towards the end of our 3-month trip, and we had just fallen in love with coffee, and we had fallen in love with Africa, right? 3 months into a around the world trip, and we had just realized the beauty of Africa, and realized that all of these coffee houses that we were visiting around the world, none of them celebrated African coffee, and it's the birthplace of coffee. So the vision was really like, hey man, we want to start a coffee brand. Firstly, we want to bring a third space type coffee environment that we can just go and hang out at locally, because we love those spaces. They're so inspirational for dreaming and meeting and working and doing all of that. And there was nothing really at the time where we were. So we just thought we want to start our own brand that celebrates Africa.
Yeah, I think that's an important part, is the celebrating Africa, celebrating home. As South Africans, you often look to the rest of the world for inspiration. There's so much here. And we wanted to champion and celebrate Africa's resources, her people, her design. And that's what we endeavored to do with Motherland.
Okay, and then I believe that's hence the name Motherland, because the coffee is from Africa, the origin.
Yes.
It was one of the first ones, I think Seb may have, as we were doing a list, it was like the top on the list, and then we came up with 40 others, you know, and then you go back to what your heart says. But yeah, that nurturing, that resource, that sense of home comes through in that word, motherland, a tribute to what our continent, what our country has to offer.
And the birthplace of coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, 2009, so that's about 11 years old. I mean, 11 years now. I mean, and take us through the first day, or the first few week or month before leading up to the first store opening. Were you guys excited? Was it nerve-wracking? Did you guys have a moment of like, oh my goodness, we're just putting all this money in, is it going to work? What went through your mind?
We're big on vision, right? So vision sustains us a lot, and so that first year we were pumped. Hey, we had tried coffee. It was an unfolding delight.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, leading up to that week before, like you said, I think it's just all systems go. I think, you know, for the first year probably we didn't ever come down, right? We would be having, I mean, our kids, I think, have grown up with entrepreneurship and at their core, because that's what you talk about at dinner, right? Because we had this vision and this dream to, you know, impact the world through coffee and celebrate Africa. And we would do that, you know, chat about that over dinner every night. So it was full on. I think we opened our first store in September, the day before my birthday, actually. So day 2 was working behind the till, going crazy on your birthday. But it was full on. It was nerve wracking. I remember Kirsty, we had just had a little boy. He was born in that June, just over the World Cup soccer time. And I think on day 2, Kirsty had our boy on her hip, and I mean,
that was so the year was really amazing. I mean, I remember when we got our branding, we were partnering with a branding agency, and we got the logo and we got the illustrated text. We were standing in a takeaway restaurant, and it was so emotional, you know, as this beautiful company was born and it found its elements. That first day, oh my goodness, I had this little boy. I'm watching these paninis go out. I'm like, is the roast veg even cooked? A lot of friends and family from our community. I actually felt like shame. They actually just buying because they feel sorry for us, you know. And that was the first day. You're so vulnerable. You put your heart out there in the world, and you know, over the next months, we transitioned from just seeing our friends, family, our community in the space. I remember walking in about 3 months later and recognizing no one in the restaurant, and I thought, this is a turning point. This isn't just our family supporting us anymore. This is actually people loving the brand. So vulnerable, but good. Highs and lows.
So you actually remember the moment, huh? Like, wait a minute, like, I don't know, who are these people? Oh, they're actual customers. You actually had that aha moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where you recognize, hey, this could actually work. I mean, you put something in the world, and those first months are touch and go, you know, is this going to fly? And I remember definitely that moment of thinking, I think this is going to work. I think this is going to go where we're hoping it's going to go.
I actually also have a moment burned into my memory where, you know, when you start a brand, people ask, oh, what demographic are you going after? Who's your target market? And we decided to launch in the Rosebank area because it was just such a, I don't know, for me, it felt like a beautiful picture of diversity. You know, you've got from guys from up in East Africa to students to businessmen to the granny with her purple rinse, you know. And I remember, you know, us wanting to be a brand for, you know, not to be everything to everyone, but we don't want to be so niche that it excludes a whole bunch of people in the population. So I remember a moment standing behind the till and looking out and seeing literally that diverse. There was a student. There was an old couple there. There was some guy with dreads, and it was just such a wide, diverse picture that it was one of those things like, oh yes, this is why we created this thing. It's for these people right now. You know.
We do love the community aspect of coffee, that you come into a third space, there is a community. Even if you're sitting alone with your iPad, you're connected in the space of work and community and conversation and inspiration. We thrive off that. It's one of the reasons we love the space so much.
Okay, and then so out of all these years, is there a specific memory that really stood out for you, that you know what, this is our highest point, it can't get higher anymore? Was there any specific moment that stood out besides the one that you guys mentioned about for example, you don't recognize anybody anymore, this is real, to the point that, wait a minute, we're actually in operation, that we actually have a point of sale, we have a system going? Was there like a defining moment? You're like, wait a minute, this is a proper business now, that you guys can think of?
I think, you know, at the beginning, obviously everything is about venue. So we started in Rosebank, and then we opened in Dunkeld West, and we would literally drive the streets of the areas around us looking for venues. And we'd go to places and we'd say, this is who we are. And they would be skeptical, and they wouldn't want to give us the space, and they would
skeptical about what? Skeptical about what?
I think like an unknown brand, and especially the bigger retail area, the bigger retail spaces were hesitant, and they'd often choose known brands over us.
Safety.
Yeah, exactly. And I just remember a couple of years in, one of the big retail centers around here approaching us and us turning them down. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Come on, the tables have turned, you know. This is a desirable brand for other people, and they wanted, and that was definitely for me a memorable turning point.
But why, I mean, you don't have to mention the name, but why did you turn them down? Was the location wrong? Was the rents? I mean, why would you turn them down?
I think we've learned what spaces work and what don't, you know, over time, and we're still learning. I mean, retail, literally, it's not a crystal ball.
Retail's detail, huh?
Yeah, and so I think going into certain mall-type spaces where we've learned that hasn't worked for us, you know, and so I think that was probably a big reason there. Yeah.
To a large extent, we love being kind of on the high street, on the corner of big spaces, and just it's a central point for business people to come, for cars to stop and pull in, for moms on the way to school, for kids on the way home. You know, all of that becomes, we've just found that that's a really beautiful space for us, and it's often a determining factor. But as Rob says, there's so many factors, and it's not a science.
Okay.
I think for me, probably one of those big moments, I had two big moments where I think, you know, you start off and you're vulnerable, you're small, you naive in a new sector that you haven't played in before, and to get some international recognition, I think was quite a big thing at one point. I remember being maybe a year or two in, and one of our customers had moved to Munich and was involved with Starbucks in Munich, and he phoned me one day and said, listen, do you mind? I've picked up some of your coffee. I have to prepare, or he had to prepare a coffee cupping ceremony for Howard Schultz in Berlin. And he's like, can you tell me a bit more about your coffee, the flavor notes, et cetera, et cetera. So he wanted to be prepped and ready. And we got feedback at the end of that at this blind cupping, that Howard Schultz had picked our coffee as being like the best of the bunch in that cup.
Wow.
Now, I mean, we generally wouldn't like peg ourselves against Starbucks from a coffee quality point of view, but just to get that, you know, an outside.
Because it's a well-known brand. It's a very, very well-known
brand.
brand.
Exactly. This giant, and a year in just being really a new startup company. It was quite a nice external feedback.
Well, that is very, very cool. And look, I believe that you are also a man of faith, and the two of you started your church, when was it, about 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's right.
Just tell us a little bit more, like, why start a church instead of just going to a church, and how do you balance, I mean, running a retail coffee store, and now you have to shepherd other people? Just walk us through that, please.
Well, I think, I mean, the question of balance is always a big one, isn't it, right? And I think that can only work with team. And so, you know, with us being involved in a retail coffee brand and operation, we rely heavily on team, right? So Sebastian, Kirstin's brother, he heads up the brand, and so he runs the day-to-day. So I think the only way we were able to do that on a sustainable level was to not be involved on the operational day-to-day parts of things. When you're involved in multiple things, I've also got another business that I'm involved in that we started in 2002. So yeah, so we're carrying quite a few hats, and yeah, I think our faith is just a central part of who we are. And I think we were looking for, sometimes things get deposited in you that you're looking for that you don't find somewhere else. And I think, all churches, all communities have got their own specific DNA, and I suppose, their DNA. And I think we were looking for a DNA that was ourselves. And so the beginning of 2018, we decided to start our own church. The church that we had been going to was actually closing down. And so, we were just at a unique opportunity to say, well, with friends that we had gathered with, that were very close to us, we've got some really tight, close-knit community and friends. We said, hey, listen, this is time to do this.
I think also as part of our trip in 2009, one of the central things that we felt God deposited in our understanding and in our hearts was the connection between family, business, church, and social justice. And we knew that our story, our personal life story, would have those four cornerstones. So church, family, social justice, and business. And our story has been an unpacking of that. We've done Motherland. We're very invested in our family. We've had seasons of homeschooling our kids. Social justice is a big aspect of what we do at Motherland, other things we'd like to be involved in, and then church. And I think the key is actually really an understanding that there is no separation between what is secular and what is spiritual. Everything in our life is spiritual. Family is spiritual, business is spiritual, community is spiritual, social justice is spiritual. And so I think in our walk with the Lord, He's taken us on this journey of actually fleshing that out, which means 2 years ago, actually starting a church community that represents that. And most of our guys are on that same journey. They've got businesses of their own, or they're employed in places, and they see their work as a very huge part of their life ministry, their life calling.
I mean, speaking about that, I really believe that the fact that we have faith, it helps a lot, because this COVID is not an event. It's not like a once-off thing. It's going to be here for quite a while. And if you don't have faith, you are reading up maybe perhaps pop psychology, you're listening to the wrong voices, and it can drive you nuts. So I want to know, how do the two of you stay sane during this period?
Stay sane.
Stay sane.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's being in a place of rest, no matter what your external circumstances and situation. And that's nothing that we can claim as our own, like, wow, I stayed in rest and I held in this. For me, it's us falling back into faith, falling back into Jesus and what He's done for us. He's seated us with Him in the heavenly places. That's where we are seated, and so for me, it's a very active reminding of myself to come back to that place of trust, because when you're in full trust, you can be fully at peace, and so I think you wrestle through, we're human at this, and we wrestle through these spaces of being, fear comes in, and then like reminding yourself actually where your anchor is, where you're seated really, and finding that place of peace. So for me, if it's COVID or not, if it's not this, it's something else, right? If it's not COVID, it's your business that is on the brink of really tough times because whatever, something happened. There's always something in life that's coming at us of sorts.
Absolutely, yeah. So interrupt, because I was reading a scripture this week, and it just reminded me that Jesus told us already, in this life we will have trouble. If you know that line, then you know it's going to happen. But every now and then we forget that line, right?
Yeah.
It's like the one thing He guaranteed.
Exactly, that's one thing that He guaranteed. And I just want to, because you mentioned about business and about finding peace. And I mean, well, the two of you as parents, would you say that entrepreneurship should be taught in school? Do you think it will help, and why?
I mean, I think as entrepreneurs, you've always got a bias, right? So I would say absolutely yes. For me, being an entrepreneur is the most exciting place that I could be at, and so we desire that for our kids. You know, I think
it's such a big part of the economy as well.
Yeah, it's such a big part of the economy. So if however many percentage of jobs that our kids are going to do when they grow up haven't even been invented yet.
Mm.
You know, it's not about just a way of processing information. It's about problem solving. Those are going to be the real skills. Problem solving, creativity, those sort of traits. And for me, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's looking at the environment around you, seeing need, and coming up with creative ways to solve that need, and also find fulfillment for yourself in your creativity and what you've created. And so I think it's crucial, even if you don't become an entrepreneur, to have a value for that. I think I would highly recommend and want my kids to be exposed to that at school as well.
Yeah, and we have on and off homeschooled our children for the last 5 years. They are now 10, 14, and 16. And, you know, I think part of that is just taking them out of what is the structured system in order to connect with what is inside of them, the gifts, the talents, the unique thing that is there, and then being able to find outlets and connection with creativity, imagination, exploration, love for learning. Those are the key elements that make an entrepreneur successful in the long term. And so to see that incorporated in a structured school environment, I think would be imperative. It would be a beautiful thing.
Okay. So, I mean, you Rob, you earlier on, you mentioned, when you were answering the question, you mentioned the two of you have incorporated that into your kids' lives. What did you mean by that? Like, do you actively kind of say, let's do something cool so we can make it into a business? Or what did you mean by that? Like, you actively incorporate that?
I'm trying to think how we actively incorporate it. I think it's mostly via discussion, right? Because the way you pick up an accent in the area that you live, it's what you're exposed to. And so our kids are exposed to thoughts. They're exposed to the trials, the victories, etc. And then I think when they respond to that, because you don't want to force your kid in a certain direction. You know, when our kids, I think particularly our eldest, when she's, you know, started little business from when she was 12 and wanted to start
what business was it? What business was it? Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Sugar, yes please.
Sugar, yes please, yeah. So she's like, you know, she's an avid baker. We love to cook. We foodies, and our kids are foodies and they love food. And so she started up a Sugar, yes please business when she was 12, and we went to the Parkview market and set up a stand with her. So you celebrate those things and, you know, teach them through practical examples.
And what kind of questions do they ask you guys about business, or do they just sit there and observe?
Well, in that instance, she, you know, got Rob to download Adobe Suite, to design the logo with her, they went and made the sign.
Wow.
You know, we looked at spreadsheets, how to work out your profit and what.
Just hold on. You were working on a spreadsheet with a 12-year-old. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't like her favorite part of the thing, right?
Yeah, she hated it. That was the worst.
I'm like, 12-year-old, you're showing how to do spreadsheets? Look, numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. I've never heard that before. Okay, but carry on. That's interesting.
It was ambitious, you know. I think it's just, but I think what we did there, it was like the big deal was, hey, she got a table out with her sign. We also own a signage company, so we made the sign for her. And so she was just proud of her creation and her baking, and, you know, and like PS, like, hey, we don't always want to fund these things from our side.
How much is this costing mom and dad? That was the question. Or are we actually making profit? And I think she actually made a little profit that time. So
did she give any profit sharing back to mom and dad?
No.
So she didn't look after. So lesson number one: look after your shareholders, right?
Tough love. We haven't yet learned that one yet.
You're just going to plant these little seeds. Later they'll grow, you know.
No, that is very, very cool. Look, you know, and in terms of faith, right? If somebody's listening right now and they are also a business owner, or they could be an employee, and they need words of encouragement, or they need some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, what would you say to them? What would your message be from them?
What if they're going through a tough time at the moment?
Yeah, tough time in terms of when's this going to end? You know, how am I going to make through this? I mean, let's be real. People are struggling to pay the bills. It's like every single day when you check out the news, it's just one bad news after another, after another, after another. Especially you from a I suppose as a spiritual guidance, the two of you. I know both of you preach, and I've listened to both of your sermons, and I loved it because the two of you don't tell fancy stories. You share, you dig into the word, and you're very real about it. That was one of the initial reasons why I said to myself, you know, I have to interview the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you understand?
Well, for me, I was reading Hebrews 4 this week, and it's this beautiful passage of how Jesus was human, and he's still in essence in his humanity, and he knows every part of what it means to be human. And I think that's huge. It's the knowledge that Jesus is with us, that God is with us in our storm. He's not in some distant place that is hard to reach, like with this brass ceiling that we're trying to attain. He's with us in the middle of what we're facing. That changes the game for me. I'm not alone. I'm with him. I can hear his voice. I may not be hopeful, but he is full of hope. I may be disappointed, but he is laughing at the future. To rest in that, in the middle of it, is so huge. And I think for us, we've learned, like Rob said, to pull back into that space of with him in this. What are you saying, God? And from that space, I think he can bring a perspective of actually he's bringing strength in us. Actually, there's a good future ahead. There's something that we can hold on to, and we're not alone.
Okay. And Rob?
Yeah, there's that, you know, that saying, like, this too will pass. And I think, you know, we've experienced that. We've been married for just over 20 years now, and we've gone through
20 years. Congratulations.
18. I was 18.
What was this like?
Yeah.
You guys were 18 when you got married?
Me, and he was 22.
I was 22, yeah.
But that's another story.
Wow, that's young. Okay. Wow. Okay, carry on, yeah.
Yeah, no, just like this too will pass, you know. And I think over this, you know, you realize that a season isn't forever, you know. Winter isn't forever. Eventually springtime comes, you know. And I think we can obviously learn that from just historically. You know, you look back at the Great Depression, or, you know, all of the things that we've endured, what our parents have endured, and things change, you know. So I think, one, we can take comfort in that. But mostly, you know, I think when we trust in what the Lord's got for us, that he's a good dad, that he's got our back, you know. Jesus said, don't worry what you will eat or drink or what you will wear, because, you know, our Father who's in heaven, you know, he's got good gifts for us, and he will take care. He knows that we need these things. And I think this is a unique opportunity for globally, you know, and particularly for believers, because so often we're not dependent purely on him. You know, we've always got our little back plan and doing things that are our plan and how we're going to make this thing work, you know, whereas we actually are called to be completely dependent on him, you know. The more we depend on him, it's actually it's a badge of honor that we get to wear, as opposed to a sign of weakness, you know, in my opinion. And so this is a unique opportunity where there are a lot of the times no other plans, right? You know, we are fully reliant on him. And so when it's totally out of my hands, it's like, okay, I can rest in that. Yeah, we do our part, you know, we don't sit home and just do nothing, unless we've obviously been asked to at moments by our government, which we obviously honor. But you get what I'm saying, you know, there's an action that we put out towards our passion, towards what he's calling us to do. But mostly it's from a place of, like, he's got this, you know,
simple trust, childlike trust.
Childlike trust. Rob and Kirsty, thank you so much for your time. And listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please click like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys one more time.
Thanks.